Fear the deer.
On September 12th, I finished up playing Fire Emblem 3 Houses. After I got done playing through all 4 routes, I had this bright and completely original idea to review each of the routes and pick which one I thought was the most well written and the one I enjoyed the most. However, as the days went by and I was collecting all my thoughts and all the facts I wanted to present, a couple of things kept coming to me. First off, Golden Deer is the best written and best presented route through the game. This is an objective fact, and I am not biased whatsoever despite the fact Golden Deer was my first route and Maryhan is such a sweetheart. However, the second thing that kept coming to my mind were a series of encounters that I actually had with deer in my childhood. And of course, everybody should know the meme by now, Fear the Deer. I know this meme was intended as a joke, but let me tell you something, deer are not always docile creatures. And if I tell you that story from my childhood, it will give you a legitimate reason to fear the deer. And so I was left with 2 choices for today's video topic. First being a critical analysis of every route through Fire Emblem 3 Houses, or tell that story from my childhood. And you know what? I decided it would be far more interesting to tell that story. So, you ready to hear it? No? Well, too bad, I'm telling it anyway. So, let's rewind the clock, say about 15 years to a beardless and glasses-less Bojacx. Being a resident of the southern United States, it's almost like a rite of passage to go hunting in the woods for the first time. And it's not like my dad came in my bedroom one day and was like, "Now son, you come of age and you need to learn to start going hunting because it'll put hairs on your chest." Actually, no, I was legitimately interested in trying my hand at hunting, just to kind of get a feel for what the experience was like. So a few months before deer season started, my mom signed me up for the hunter's education course you have to take in my state, and I went through all the prerequisite programs that you had to, and I became certified to go hunting. Now, if anyone has any knowledge of how deer season usually works, bow hunters and black powder hunters get to go first. And then when November rolls around, they open up deer hunting to pretty much everybody else. Following the advice of my father, we waited till deer season pretty much opened up for everybody. Now, my grandfather, out of the kindness of his heart, allowed us to go hunting in the woods behind his country home. And so everything seemed to fall into place. I got suited up, put my orange vest on, put my heavy coat on, my thick pants, my boots with camo on them. I was ready. So it must have been the first, maybe second Saturday in November of that year. And me and my dad, we're all suited up. We go in the woods. We're there at the butt crack of dawn, sitting there waiting for my quarry to come walking across, and nothing. And of course, being the younger and more impatient version of myself, I complained about how boring the experience was. But my father reassured me that deer hunting takes time and eventually I would get one if I just kept at it. So, the next Saturday, tried again, nothing. By this point, the weather's getting much colder and I'm getting aggravated. Nevertheless though, I tried to keep my nose to the grindstone and I went back the following Saturday. And let's just say that me nor my father were prepared for what we were about to encounter. So, we're heading back into the woods. It's still pitch black outside. Dawn has not even broke over the horizon yet. You know, pretty typical for when we show up. We get to the back of the pasture, we undo the gate as we normally do, we start walking in the woods, and we couldn't have taken more than about 10 paces into the woods before something made it clear that we were not welcome. Directly to our left, whatever it was making the most god-awful snorting noises and stamping you ever heard. Think Buckfire snorting from Mega Man ZX Advent combined with a bull sounding like it's getting ready to charge at you. Now, my father, not knowing exactly what it was, told me to freeze and don't move. So we're both frozen in place, and whatever it is just continues to snort and stamp, and just keeps on going. Now, my dad's thinking that anything we might do might provoke this thing, but he quickly looks out of the corner of his eye at me and inspects me more carefully. And he happens to notice that my heavy jacket is not zipped all the way up, and that my white thermals are showing from underneath. Thinking that that might be what's provoking the creature, he tells me to very slowly and very subtly zip up my heavy coat. After doing that, the snorting just suddenly stops. But we're still frozen there probably for the next 30 seconds because we're not sure what the creature's doing. And then all of a sudden you could just hear it just stampeding its way back through the woods away from us. Now my dad, he turns to me, he has this terrified look on his face because something like this has never happened to him before. And of course me being present only exacerbated his fears. But thankfully the danger had passed. So we proceeded on to our hunting spot for the day, which was on this small cliffside next to the cabin that my grandfather had helped us put back in the woods earlier in the year. And so we're sitting on this slope on this cliffside, dawn breaks, and 2, maybe 3 hours pass, nothing's really going on, and I got bored and laid my head back on a log and fell asleep. Now, the next part of this story is based on what my father told me happened while I was asleep. So, I must not have been out for maybe more than 5 minutes, and my father said I started to snore. And according to him, after 10 minutes of straight snoring, that stampeding noise from earlier in the morning was back. And he said the noise just kept getting louder and louder and closer, and it was winding up the trail around the cliffside that we were on, until it finally made its way to us, and my father came face to face with what was snorting at us that morning. It was an extremely territorial 12-point buck. The buck thought that my snoring was another buck trying to move in on his territory. And so the buck is standing at the top of the slope looking down at my dad and just snorting at him angrily. And he turns over to me, and I had went to sleep in such a way that I was almost cuddling with the hunting rifle that we came with. So in a panic, my dad's trying to get me up before we get attacked, and I'm not budging. I'm so far into dreamland that I'm not waking up. I don't have any idea that any of this is going on. Now, my dad, in case of emergency, had brought his pistol with him just in case he needed to take action himself. So my dad begins drawing his weapon and getting it prepared to fire, when all of a sudden, the buck just suddenly loses interest in us, and he dashes off as fast as he came. My dad, of course, is relieved that we're safe, but he's also kind of angry at me because I dozed off and kind of caused that to happen, and that I also missed out on an opportunity to snag my first deer. So I wake up from my little nap probably about 15 minutes after the incident took place, and my dad's just sitting there looking at me with just this face of horror, yet kind of laughing about it because no one got hurt. And he's like, "You missed all the excitement." And naturally, I kind of felt bad that all of that happened while I dozed off. But at the same time, hearing that a buck had come nearby, not once but twice in fact, gave me confidence that there are deer running through here. And it shouldn't be long until I finally bag and tag one. Now, did I eventually kill my first deer later on in that season? Unfortunately, no. Did I get close? I absolutely did. But after 6 to 7 weeks of nothing to show for it and freezing my behind off, I packed it in. While I never got to bring home some fresh venison for the family, that encounter with that buck on that third weekend has always stuck with me. And normally I'm a pretty boring guy with not many interesting stories to tell about my life, but that story is definitely one that I can tell and we can all laugh about it because nobody got hurt. But nevertheless, should be a constant reminder to fear the deer. Now, in conclusion, what did any of this have to do with golden deer and Fire Emblem 3 houses? Why, absolutely nothing. But I hope you all enjoyed it though. Anyway, story time's over. I gotta run at this point. As always, if you liked the video, make sure you comment down below and smash the like button. And if you disliked it, show it to your enemies like the wonderful human being that you are. And with that, I shall leave things here. Thank you so much for watching, and let's do this story thing again sometime.